Shalom everyone, I'm going to continue the series of the famous Sephardic Rabbanim, and here on the 13th of Elul is going to be the Hilula of famous Iraqi rabbi, one of the great rabbis from Baghdad, the Ben Ish Chai, also Rabbi Yosef Chaim is his full name to be exact. It's actually, there's different opinions on the actual English calendar year where he was born. According to some opinions, it was as early as 1832, and many opinions 1835. Back in the English calendar year, in the English calendar date, the 1st of September, he would pass away later exactly one day towards the 1st of September, the 30th of August in 1909. Obviously, naturally, there would be 31 days in that specific month in 1909. So we're talking about now, it's 124 years from the time of recording here in 2023. He was one of the famous rabbis from Iraq, and would actually become a leading Chacham in Iraq, world renowned, and many people will learn the famous books nowadays. It's sitting in many of the yeshivot, many Sephardi and Ashkenazi homes of the colossal work of the Ben Ish Chai. So who was he? He was he came from very, very great lineage. First of all, must be said he was born. His father actually was Chacham Eliyahu Chaim, who was actually the son of Chacham Moshe Chaim, who was a head rabbi and a leader of the Baghdad Jewish community, which was a very prominent position at that time, because in Iraq there was a huge Jewish community and a flourishing Torah community. A miraculous story occurred with him when he was 7 years old, as the youngest 7 years old, where he fell inside a bore, inside a pit in Iraq, and it looked like the chance of him surviving was very, very small, because he was stuck, he fell for a long time, and a miracle happened and he was saved. And out of gratitude to Hashem, he dedicated his life to Torah study. And it's actually interesting, he spent many, many hours, even as a young child, learning from the books. But his father had an extensive library, Torah library, inside his house. He spent many hours delving in and learning. He would actually end up learning in the famous Iraqi yeshiva of Yeshivat Bet Zilka, which is actually headed by Chacham Abdallah Somech, one of the great Iraqi rabbis, who actually is going to be his Hilula next week at the time of recording. Very much, I did a video on him before, and one of the great Iraqi rabbis. When Chacham Yosef Chaim, young age at that time, 14, the famous Rabbi Chaim of Turkey was corresponding actually to his father, Rabbi Chacham Yosef Chaim's father at the time. And the cleverness and the righteousness of Chacham Yosef Chaim, who would become later on Chacham Yosef Chaim, he was able to answer the most astounding questions and respond to Rabbi Chaim Pelagi, and he became world renowned. Everyone knew, his father himself knew what a great, astounding Talmid Chacham that Chacham Yosef Chaim actually was. Very, 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 very impressive. It's actually interesting. Every single night he would get up for Tikkun Chatzot. He was learning day and night the whole time. He would get up early morning for sunrise within regards to Tfilat Netz, obviously the optimum time. For 6 years he took extensive fasts where he fasted by day and only ate by night, which was obviously had a weakening effect on his physical bodies, but he wanted to use all his energy to have it all spiritual energy, to connect it and to be mitkaven with all his spiritual endeavors to Hashem. In fact, they built a mikveh inside his house, ritual bath, so that he could at any time, he could go inside a mikveh because of the purity reasons, to purify himself at any stage in time. He was actually only at the age of 18 years old. He married Rabbanit Rachel, who was the daughter of Rabbi Yehuda Somech, who was actually a relative of Abdallah Somech, who I said before was the Rosh Yeshiva of Yeshivat Bet Zilka in Iraq, the famous, let's just say, top yeshiva in many aspects in Baghdad at that point in time. And it's actually interesting, Chacham Yosef Chaim was known for the attention he showered upon his children. He taught them a great amount of Torah and conversing with them. And he had a huge schedule the whole time with so many lectures and everything else, but was still able to give them attention. They say he often composed little riddles and puzzles to entertain, for example, his kids and many other people, to keep them challenging within regards to Torah. And some of them are recorded in the famous book of his Imrei Vina, which I very much recommend everyone to read over or to search upon. So it was that when he became 25 years old, his father passed away. It was at a relatively young age. And at that point in time, the Jews all the Jewish community of Baghdad wanted him to become the rabbi of the community. He never took an official position as a head of the Baghdad community, but he was to some unofficial role. Everyone turned to him the whole time. He was seen as not as an unofficial Hacham Bakshi, as they say, which is a chief rabbi Lashon in the Sephardic terminology. And actually, the famous Porat Yosef Yeshiva in Yerushalayim, where many of the great Sephardi rabbanim, including Rabbi Ezra Atiyah, Chacham Obadiah Yosef, and many other great rabbis, they actually learned that it was actually built on the advice of the Ben Ish Chai, of Chacham Yosef Chaim. Actually, it was a famous man, a very, very great tzaddik of the name Yosef Shalom of Calcutta of India, who was actually a patron of Chacham Yosef Chaim. And many other things can be related with regards to this great rabbi from Iraq. He strengthened Shabbat observance and Torah observance over there. He actually, another interesting thing is, he actually refused to take a salary for any of his public services and everything else. And he supported his family. He was actually a partner in the family business. Well, actually, it's interesting. The book, the Pele Yoet, says that if someone's from a large family or any family, and they're working in businesses, and they've got a son that is the Talmid Chacham. This is what Rab Eliezer Papo actually writes, who's from Bulgaria originally. They should actually, it's the best thing to do, is to make the person, the great rabbi, a silent partner in the company and give them a salary to support them and keep them in teaching their Torah endeavors. And that's very much what happened inside his family. He actually wanted all his books. He published many, many books. They say he had over 30 colossal works, and many of his manuscripts, which he actually had, they got stolen from various different people in Iraq, possibly anti-Semitic reason-wise or anything else. And it never actually got published, but 30 of his works were actually published, many of them in Israel. In fact, he wanted it to be published in Israel because he saw the Kedusha of the land of Eretz Israel, that having his works published there was very, very important to him. It went by camel all the way from Baghdad, all the way from Iraq to Israel. It's not a short journey. It could get lost. There are these manuscripts also, but many of these colossal works actually ended up being written and published over there, and very much is there. He actually did a huge amount of public service. He personally funded his books over there. He refused actually sponsorship, it's reported, over for any of the books. You see, nowadays there's so many books, people ask sponsorships and everything else, but he actually paid for it all with his own money. A lot of the money, any of the money he made, much of it that if it was made from it, he would distribute it to the poor. And many people came to him, and he would distribute a lot of money to the poor. He actually donated a lot of the books to Torah scholars also for free, so that they could also study his great colossal works also. He tried to bridge gaps between the Sephardi and Ashkenazi communities. He's very, very respected among a lot of the Ashkenazi communities, even in modern day. In some of their yeshivot, they also quote him a lot, and he is mentioned a lot. And he was actually in correspondence with a lot of the great Ashkenazic Rabbanim all throughout his life also. For 50 years from his appointment, let's just say his unofficial appointment as a rabbi, to his death, he lectured for 1 hour daily on Torah law and Agadata. This is historical and incidental material. In the Salat Letziri, this is a small synagogue, actually, I believe, in Baghdad. Also, 4 times a year he lectured at the Great Synagogue of Baghdad. Also, it was reported over. There was many other things can be said. I'll go on to a lot of the great Torah works and the Torah books that he published now also. I'll give over a background of his colossal works. For example, first of all, there's a book called the Mikabtzei, or it can be pronounced in a different way. It was an exotic work, exposition of Jewish law, which he refers to often in Ben Ish Chai, in the Ben Ish Chai itself, providing a more detailed explanation of the reasoning underlying certain decisions. For example, as I stated before, he had his work printed in Jerusalem. He actually expounds on that over there. There's also another famous book called the Ben Yehoyada, which is actually, or some people would actually call the commentary the Benayahu. So what is it? It's a commentary on the Talmud, which is a resource in understanding the Agadata, which is naturally a narrative of sections of the Talmud. That gives. There was a famous responser called the Rav Pe'alim, which he is often also referred to as. And the Torah Lishma itself, the famous Sefer, the Ben Ish Chai itself, which is actually published in Jerusalem. The Ben Ish Chai is a standard reference in many of the Sephardi homes. You would see it also in many of the Ashkenazi homes also. It's learned. This book is in various Sephardic yeshivot and Ashkenazic yeshivot all over the world and is held at the highest esteem. The book actually is a collection of homilies he gave over 2 years discussing the weekly portion all the way from Bereshit to Parshat V'zot HaBracha at the end of Sefer Devarim. And each chapter actually starts off, there's a peticha within regards to a mystical discussion, usually explaining how a Kabbalistic interpretation of certain verses relates to a particular specific point of halacha Jewish law, and then continuing to expound on the halacha with definitive rulings also. It's very, very interesting. He actually wrote many other works. Also, he was, many of the Sephardi countries, a lot of the great Rabbanim would actually do a lot of their works within regards to parable forms and piyutim. Poetry was very much used a lot. And Rabbi Yosef Chaim was noted for his stories and the famous parables he had. Many of these parables and stories are actually scattered all throughout his halachic works, and have been actually, interestingly enough, have been published recently into separate books also in his lifetime and after he passed away, which is very, very interesting also. So there's a lot of great work. He passed away in 1909, which is, as I said before, it's 124 years since his passing. He's left like a huge legacy over here. Since he's passed more than 100 years ago, we know that we can see many of the houses, all of his books are learned and everything else. And another thing is also he was known for saying the emet and everything else. He could have been seen as more stringent, but in a loving way. Also, he had that greatness to him, and he wouldn't compromise just for the sake of it. He had love for the Torah and was one of the great rabbis also. You remember, also in Iraq at the time, there was a lot of anti-Semitism going on, and he lived, even in his youth, he had to suffer through that, where there was trumped up charges. Some people, close relatives of his, suffered, where it was, a lot of it was seen through anti-Semitic lens. Unfortunately, it was very much due to anti-Semitism. So, for example, currently in Israel itself, many, many different schools are actually named after him. There's streets that are named after him over in Israel. And so many people are learning all over the world the great teachings of Chacham Yosef Chaim also. Another thing to add is his Torah approach is imbued with so much love and passion and practice, and it's absolutely amazing. And it's going to be his Hilula of the great Rabbi. His just a book, a kid's book, which I've got about him, which I bought for my son some years back, and a lot of stories over that. There's hundreds of books. There's just a picture of the famous Rabbi himself. I'll just conclude by saying one thing, that he is. There's a legend says that he used to learn with Elijah the prophet, Eliyahu the Hanabi, every Motzei Shabbat. A famous story about it. I believe I related it over another video. I'd leave it for you to check upon that story. Very, very famous story. But many people said he had Ruach HaKodesh. He was one of the great rabbis of Jewish history. So I very much recommend everyone to look into him, to light candles on his Hilula, study his works, share his works to everyone else. He was one of the great rabbis of Iraq over the last hundreds of years. And remember, Iraq was a place with a flourishing Jewish community. They actually say that the first Kiruv yeshiva, the Outreach yeshiva, was actually under the philanthropy of the famous Sassoon family, I believe, that was opened in Iraq. He had close contacts also with Sir Sassoon, also a famous man in Iraq, famous philanthropist in Iraq, and was connected all over the world with all the great Rabbanim and many of the great people. So guys, please watch over the previous videos. Also, I'll try and share a link of the previous video of Chacham Yosef Chaim, the Ben Ish Chai, and wishing you a fantastic day. And may we all study his fantastic works. Take care here, live from Israel, from the city of Bet Shemesh, and just wishing you brachot to everyone. Take care and have a great day.